thank you all for joining this session. I want to get a quick show of hands before we start. Who here knows what Gen AI is? So raise your hand if you have. Okay, if you didn't raise your hand, we might have a problem here, okay? I mean, I don't know where you've been for the last few days. But moving on, what we're trying to do here is, there's obviously been a lot of great presentations over the last few days. I just want to highlight some work that we've been doing at Rivery. To give you my background, I've been in the data integration space for nearly 10 years. Joined Rivery very recently, about 3 months ago. And one of the biggest problems I've seen over that time is really the long tail of sources that we need to replicate into our data lakes and into our data warehouses. And this latest innovation from Rivery is really designed to try and solve that problem once and for all. So I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes kind of talking about where we are, how we think AI is going to impact on data pipeline development. And then I'm going to spend quite a bit of time showing you how Rivery's latest innovation is going to try and solve that problem. So let's get started. So obviously the problems that we have in creating and maintaining data pipelines primarily fall down to, obviously building them, and then we have an ongoing maintenance cost in keeping them up and running as APIs changes, as we hit kind of corner cases and databases that we haven't hit before. And what I want to discuss today is how Gen AI is going to try and optimize these processes and how we're working to try and do that. So the reality is that data engineers are already very swamped in their workloads. Most of us are spending at least 50% of our time on pipeline management, and times where data teams are shrinking, where budgets are changing, teams are shrinking, the number of data sources is only going up, pipeline requests is going up. It's becoming extremely hard to deliver the pace our businesses demand. So we have maintenance overhead, we have an increasing number of data sources that we have to deal with, scaling, performance, trying to manage all that in-house, and kind of, first of all, dealing with quantity of sources and then volume coming from individual sources. And if we try to put AI in perspective for a moment, a recent report from the IMF predicts AI will impact about 40% of the jobs in the world. That probably sounds a little bit low compared to the number of times you've heard AI in the last few days. But that could be, you have to think about if that's going to change the way we do our jobs or replacing jobs completely. But in our line of work and data pipelines, data warehouses, it's only going to affect us even more than anything else. So if we look at data engineering, the generative AI impact is twofold. On the one hand, we have how we have to think about how data engineers would benefit from these new AI tools. Are they going to help us speed up the type of work that we're doing? Or are AI, and with like AI copilots like Databricks Assistant or GitHub copilots, are they going to help us write code or get answers to questions faster? It could also be tools that will help us auto-document our work, eliminate manual tasks. But the double-edged sword that we have here is that, on the other hand, as all of these generative AI tools are only as good as the data provided to them, we'll need to build new data pipelines to feed those generative AI applications. Some of this data already exists. It may be a question of just piping it into new workflows. And in many cases, it'll be new data that we haven't ingested to date, including, of course, unstructured data. So that's what the question ultimately comes down to, is finding this balancing act between the efficiency improvements that we're hopefully going to see by bringing in the increased workload from new Gen AI pipelines, but we need to make sure there's a net benefit from whatever we start doing. Is there going to be overall productivity gains? So to try and answer this question, we need to understand what is going to be the main additional workload for data engineers when it comes to AI. And so far, it looks like the main way today to make AI really useful, to avoid hallucinations, involves building retrieval augmented generation, or RAG workflows. If we simplify what it means to build a RAG workflow, essentially, we're looking at ingesting our contextual data into our AI experience. That could be data from our enterprise database, applications data, or even files. Once we have this data, for example, in Databricks, we can then use a few easy-to-use Databricks capabilities to prepare that data, or in other words, chunk it, vectorize it, and load it into what we call the embedding model, and finally store it. Essentially, that means that once we have the data, everything from the middle of this diagram to the right is a pretty simple and easy and repeatable process for your workflow. And that's going to lead me on to the demo here of what we've been building for the last few months, Rivery Blueprint. What Blueprint is a Gen AI tool within Rivery to help you generate new data pipelines entirely in an automated fashion. So not only the the replication of data, but actually the pipeline itself being replicated for non-native sources. So you're going to have to forgive me while we come out of the presentation here and start switching over. But on the first place, we're going to move into here. And so this is our Rivery dashboard. And in here, we're going to go in here. And we have a few different source to target rivers pre-configured. So source to target rivers basically aligned to a replication from a data source, like a database, an API, to a warehouse, to a data lake. Traditionally, we've automated ETL tools support like a finite list of sources, databases, APIs, but really you have to find workarounds for non-native applications, non-native data sources. What we're launching today is Blueprint. So if I go in here to this Add River button here, we're going to click New Source to Target River, and we're going to use an API that we use internally at Rivery, ChargeBee. So ChargeBee is a subscription management platform that we use to handle all our billing for our pay-as-you-go customers. So if we search in here, we see we don't have a native source for ChargeBee. What we do have is Blueprint. So if we go down here and click into Blueprint, we're going to click Generate with our Copilot here. And we're presented with a prompt, or a Gen AI prompt or a Gen AI box that we can give a prompt that's going to generate a YAML file, which is going to basically figure out from the docs from ChargeBee what we need to fill in to retrieve data from ChargeBee. And in this case, right now, we don't define what docs to look at, but coming soon when we release this generally, you'll be able to define what docs you want to look at, and it'll generate what you're looking at. So I'm just going to copy my prompt from here. So we're going to give it this prompt here, which is fetch and transform all available items from ChargeBee with Rivery Inc. as a ChargeBee site. Rivery Inc. is our instance of ChargeBee. So this is going to start kind of parsing through ChargeBee docs, figuring out what available endpoints are there, and it's going to normalize that and kind of create a schema for us of this data. Rather than all of us sitting here watching a loading screen, I'm going to move on to one that I prepared before. We'll come back to this one to see what it's given us. But if we go to here in Summary, we can see that we've successfully created a flow. We've loaded data from this. And as we go to Source, we see this Selected Blueprint tab. And if we go down here and click Edit, it's going to pull out the YAML file that is dictating what data we pull. It's very easy to read, to understand what we're getting from that. So you can modify this if it's not pulling exactly what you need. We go to our target. In this case, that is, of course, Databricks that we're writing to. So we're writing to the Rivery test catalog in public schema. And we are writing, we can see here that we have automatically pulled the schema, or that we've flattened the JSON that we're seeing back from that API. We've picked up what's available there. We've already mapped it from from the source to the target column names. We figured out data types, and we are going to be able to replicate that to our warehouse. So if we go back to the one we were just working on, see, it takes about 2 minutes, which is why I did this one earlier. But if we go through here, we can see this is active, it's running. And if we move over to our Databricks instance, and I go here, which is the schema I created earlier from that table, we can see down here, this is the same one. We can see what we've replicated across. So basically, in a very quick process, we've automatically used this blueprint feature to create an API connection that is not only going to be created by Rivery, it's going to be maintained by Rivery. It's not just created a black box, it's generated a YAML file that we can edit, that we can understand what it's actually doing. And as well as all that, Rivery is an automated ELT platform with orchestration capabilities built in, which means that not only do you benefit from having a tool that generates the pipeline, generates the connection to the API itself, you get to benefit from all the scale of our existing pipelines that we have as well. So being able to process large amounts of data, being able to write to all our native sources that we have already, alongside existing sources. So we're hopeful that a tool like this, as we develop and as GenAI continues to develop, we'll be able to sidestep. I mean, I'm sure we've all had to gather data from webhooks, from sources we don't natively support, gather data from files, maybe email ingestion, things like that. We'll be able to handle data like this in this way. So, is there any questions on that stuff before I move on? If anyone has any questions they don't want to ask here, we'll be at stand 83 after. But just to keep going here, we move back here. So that was Blueprint, and kind of what we've gone over here. Sorry. To summarize what we've done with Blueprint, Blueprint provides you extreme simplicity and connect to any data sources, do so in just minutes. It's going to save a great amount of time, not only in building pipelines, but also maintaining them. And it's going to make our jobs easier to focus on kind of what's driving value for the business, and building, cool, non-hallucinating API or AI applications. And as I said, we'd love to talk more about this, what else Rivery can help you with. So please come meet us at our booth. I'll be able to answer any more questions we want to talk through on this. It's a little bit of an involved project to speak through up here. But yeah, we'd love to meet you over at the desk, and we'll also be doing a much bigger virtual launch event with the product team who built this on June 25th, and you can sign up directly on our website. Great, thank you all very much.